Welcome back to the DrupalEasy podcast. This is season 17, episode number 1, and I am Mike Anello, your host. First off, I really hope everyone enjoyed our April Fool's Day episode. If you missed it, you might want to take a few minutes and check it out and get a really good laugh at my expense. In today's episode, I'll be talking with Jamie Abrahams, one of the maintainers of the AI module. We'll be talking about all things AI in the Drupal community, but most importantly, we'll be diving in a bit into the new AI module that's bringing together many of the various AI module maintainers in the Drupal community. But before we get to the interview, I would be remiss if I didn't at least quickly mention DrupalEasy's long-form professional module development course. Our online semester begins on August 13th and runs twice a week for 15 weeks. And honestly, if you really want to learn Drupal module development, I encourage you to check out the course at drupaleasy.com/PMD. Welcome to the DrupalEasy podcast, Jamie Abrahams. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's great to meet you. I don't think we've met previously, so it's always nice to meet someone for the first time when we're doing the podcast. So Jamie, you're here today. You're going to talk to us about kind of the state of AI integration modules in Drupal, and we're going to specifically focus on a new initiative around a module simply titled AI that actually has the AI namespace on Drupal.org as well, which is kind of nice. But before we do that, I am not even going to attempt to pronounce your Drupal.org username. So go ahead and pronounce that and give us a little backstory where that name comes from.
Yeah, so it's Yautja Satanu. So you know Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
If it has punching in it, then it's a movie I've seen. Yes.
Yeah, so I was obsessed with the video game Alien vs. Predator when I was younger, and the Predators in their own language and in the comics are called Yautjas, and one of their names is Satanu. So I had that since I was about, 10. It stuck as a teenager, and I got involved in the Drupal community from a pretty young age as a teenager. And so that became my handle. And in most business contexts, I don't use it. But when I'm doing Drupal, that's still my name.
Yeah, your account's over 15 years old. So you've been around Drupal for a long time. How'd you get started?
Yeah, so we got started. Me and my co-founder, Andrew Belcher, we were aiming to build a company around church management software. But I was always excited by online communities. Ever since I was about 10 or 11, I was playing Ultima Online, like an MMO. So I was excited by online communities and the impact it could have on culture. So we started this company, and we thought the CRM aspect of what we needed would take about 3 months to build. And 15 years later, we're still working on native Drupal CRM to a degree.
Yeah.
We've diversified since then. So originally it was mainly churches and church organizations, but we've got quite a diverse portfolio of clients now. So our largest is a train management delay repay system for train operating companies. So it's a system where if your train's delayed, you can upload your ticket into it. It validates that your ticket was valid for that journey, calculates how delayed it was, cross-referencing a very large database we built. It's got fraud checks, customer service, repays you the amount, and we provide that directly for the train companies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's why we got into AI, because as you can imagine, there's a lot of scope for AI automating things there.
Absolutely. So the company's Freely Give.
Yeah.
And you're the director / co-founder, correct?
Yeah, me and Andrew, we co-founded, we started working together a long time ago, just over 20 years ago. Yeah. And I did some coding when I was 16. It was like VB script. CSS was this new thing to me at the time. Everything was tables-based layouts. I got paid to build some websites, but the websites would have GIFs of like snow floating down, that kind of stuff. But really early on, Andrew could just do everything that I needed. And I actually had this team of like 14 to 16-year-olds at our church building things. We were building this. We're going to try and make an open source online community platform for churches at the time, based around PHP BB. Yeah, so that's where we started.
Didn't VB script, didn't that become ASP?
Yeah. So I was doing ASP. Yeah, so I was doing ASP.
Yeah, that's where I got my start as well.
That's where you got your start, yeah.
Well, actually, the very first thing I did in web development was, and this goes back, I don't want to even count how many years, and this is back in like the Mosaic days. That's how old I am. But creating CGI scripts using Object Pascal via Borland Delphi. And then from there, I got into VB Script and ASP and ASP.NET and Cold Fusion and blah, 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 blah. And here we are talking about Drupal so many years later. But let's stop talking about the past. Let's fast forward to today, to the future, because really the main topic that I want to talk to you about is this new AI module. And I was super excited when you wrote a blog post. I don't even know what the date was. That in June maybe when you wrote that, or May, or
yeah, I think so. Yeah,
fairly recently. And I was very excited to see it because the goal of the AI module, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to basically provide kind of low-level common functionality for AI modules in Drupal.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, very good. And so if you kind of, before your announcement about the AI module, there's more than a few AI modules on Drupal.org in the contrib space. And that's always kind of whenever I see stuff like that, we saw that like with WYSIWYG editors back in the Drupal 7 days, and the gazillion different ways to lay out pages, even today. For me, it was great to see, okay, a lot of these AI module maintainers are saying, okay, hey, before we go too far down the road here, let's team up. Let's team up and put common functionality in one place. That way we can all build our stuff, faster, better, stronger on top of this super strong foundation. So what was kind of your view of the current state of AI modules leading up to you and the other maintainers getting together and saying, hey, let's join forces?
Yeah, so we'd actually been talking a lot. So everyone who had been doing AI stuff, we'd been trying to organize stuff on Hash AI on Slack. We'd been trying to do regular meetups for a good year and a half. So it's been a while that we have been collaborating behind the scenes. The big thing was this abstraction layer and about the timing of that. So to some degree, I actually I pushed back a little bit. So, Marcus really wanted to do it. A lot of developers really wanted to do this abstraction layer. And for me, I was really keen on finding genuine uses of AI that would work and impact people first, before worrying about like underlying technology. Because a year and a half ago, AI was very cool in theory, but there were so many demos that seemed magical. But when you tried it out, it just didn't get things right. Just slightly below that level for it to be useful. It was just this interesting demo that you wouldn't want to try out. But gradually over the last year, we've seen real use cases of it making a big difference. We've seen a lot of downloads of the OpenAI module. People were very excited by the CK editor stuff. Marcus with the AI interpolator was doing amazing work. And RAG AI search stuff was starting to take off. People were really interested in it. So it happened around about, June, just before June, that given these things were really taking off, Kevin approached us. He also noticed that the AI namespace was something that someone else was sitting on it for quite a long time, and there wasn't anything happening with it, so we could take over that AI namespace. And we thought, if we have that namespace, now's the time.
So you mentioned a couple of names. I just want to introduce some of the players that we're talking about. Marcus and I forget, I'm blanking on his last name all of a sudden.
Johannesson, yeah.
Johannesson. He works for Freely Give with you.
He does, yeah.
He is the maintainer of the AI interpolator module.
Yeah.
Which, if you haven't checked this module out, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to our listeners. It's amazing. And Marcus has done a series of videos using AI interpolator, which is just jaw-dropping, some of the demos he does. So that's Marcus that you mentioned. Kevin Quillen, who is the maintainer of the OpenAI /ChatGPT module, which I'll go out on a limb and say that's probably the AI module that's gotten the most attention so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
That does a lot of generative stuff, mainly on, entity add edit pages, generating tags and, providing a CK editor button for you to give it a prompt and it will generate some content for you in CK editor. Yeah, okay. So I wanted to make sure that we weren't shortchanging any of the players or the modules that you referenced there.
Yeah. Marcus worked for a large PR firm for a while building this AI stuff. So he's been also working on AI stuff for a good year and a half.
That's right, yeah. And he's new to freelygive.com.
But he's new to Freely Give, yeah. So AI Interpolator was his thing that he'd really been pushing for quite a long time. And then Workflows of AI is that place with all the videos.
Yes.
And seeing that, it's the speed at which you can build really cool AI applications that actually do something It's sort of like 20 minutes, half an hour, a couple of
all
hours.
In the browser.
All in the browser. Amazing. Yeah.
So you kind of, set the table for us that there's more than just, the OpenAI module or the OpenAI interpolator module. There's also Augmentor and a bunch of others. But there's a few things that all of those modules have in common. And that's the functionality that is initially going to move into the AI module. And for in some respects, it's already there. So I just kind of want to cover that real quick and just talk about how, if you're going to be making calls to AI providers, you need to authenticate with them.
Yeah.
So every module kind of had to build their own method for doing that. And so that's one of the things that has been brought into the AI module. So can you talk about that real quick, like what that looks like?
Yeah, so the core, what we started with was an abstraction layer because everyone was focused on OpenAI. And whenever we'd show off these cool demos, the first thing people would ask us is, can we do it all with open source? Meanwhile, Claude has been just getting so good. Like Sonnet 3.5 is amazing. So whereas before OpenAI was the only player, really, now it's not the case. There's a lot of different providers. Mistral, if you're in Europe, especially if you're French speaking, is a lot better than OpenAI and Claude in a lot of situations. So we started with, okay, we need to do this abstraction layer. And we built on top of a module called LLM Provider made by someone called Michael Gao, SEO Gao. And so he's part of this team. And Marcus, he took his module, sort of made it a bit more Drupal-y, made it something that everything else could work on. And that was step one that we built on top of Alpha 1, was being able to do the core of what the OpenAI module could do. But now you have this abstraction layer where you can choose which provider you want, set up all your keys, set up all your authentication, but you can now swap them out. So anything you build on top of the AI module, it will be able to support all of the models that have a provider.
Yeah, so kind of the goal or an example of that is, maybe today you build a solution that uses one provider to, for some bit of AI functionality, but maybe 6 months from now, there's another provider that comes out that has more powerful functionality for what you want to do. You don't really have to redo anything other than just swapping out the provider via, a configuration form on your site.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's really powerful from an ethical standpoint as well. Like if as the models go in a direction that you prefer, if there's more environmentally friendly models, if there's ones that are more and more open source, you can now choose that. And a big reason why now's a good time is the open source models, they're getting really good. They're actually genuinely useful. They weren't a year and a half ago. Whereas now there's plenty of situations where you would be totally happy using a completely self-hosted, have the model on your own server. There's no privacy issues. It's all open source. There's no censorship issues or control or worried about being banned. So it's very powerful by being able to build things on an abstraction layer.
So the other side of that abstraction layer is that to make a call to one of these providers, they all have their own API. So like if you want to send, a chunk of text to one provider and say, please extract, some keywords from that, each provider might have a slightly different API call to their service in order to get that data back. So there's abstraction layers for both providing the data to the provider, in a common way so that to make everything swappable, as well as receiving that data back so that the data that comes back from the provider is then translated into a common interface so that what you get back is in a consistent format regardless of the provider that is giving you that data. So it's my understanding that those two bits, the plugin architecture for the providers and those common interface layers, that's kind of the MVP of the AI module. Do I have that about right?
Yeah, you do. And one of the reasons why AI Interpolator is so powerful is because it takes what you just said and then pushes it further for not just AI, but all of these services. So with LangChain, one thing Marcus was struck. So LangChain is sort of the starting point of everything interesting in AI. About a year and a half ago, LangChain was this library where everything cool that anyone was building, you'd see it in LangChain. So it became a big inspiration for all of us doing anything with AI. Python library, very code heavy. And it was really into this idea of chaining prompts and services together to build complex applications by doing things step by step. But one thing Marcus found was every single service you used would send data back in a completely different format. So you'd have to write a lot of code to make it pass it on to the next step.
Right.
But by putting everything in fields, by making it so that every single time you send something to a service or an AI module, a model, etc., you put it in a field, like the date field, it's now in a very consistent format. So with the AI module and the abstraction layer, we're doing that for just standard prompts. Then we're extending that with AI automators to do that with chaining things and putting things into fields. And then similarly with AI search, we're doing the same kind of thing for using AI to search things, using something called RAG or vector search or embeddings.
Yeah, and even just hearing you talk about it now, like it gets me excited all over again from the first time I really kind of understood what this module is going for, because it's really exciting. Because it allows you, and if you go to that workflowsofai.com site that we talked about earlier that has all the YouTube videos about AI Interpolator, it's really cool, some of those demos, the way it'll take some author input, send it to one AI provider to do something, get that response back, and then send that response to a different AI provider to do something slightly different or add on to that. And so just the fact that you can chain these calls to different AI providers and have it all work somewhat magically right now, it seems, in the browser is just amazing.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I do want to mention, we're going to have a lot of the links to stuff we're talking about in the show notes. Let's take another step back. So we kind of talked about, actually, it's not really a step back yet. We talked about kind of the MVP for the AI module, but that doesn't really cover the functionality that you see in the OpenAI ChatGPT module that exists today, or the stuff in AI Interpolator or Augmenter module. So how far will the AI module go? Will it just go so far to provide this base level functionality, and then it will become a dependency of OpenAI ChatGPT or Interpolator? Or is the plan to bring some of the functionality from those other modules actually into the AI module? Where's the line?
Yeah, what our goal is it is kind of like an API module, but we wanted to make it so that when you install the AI module, it would give you all the functionality you'd expect from an AI module. So most of the functionality for OpenAI, the OpenAI module, we are porting that into the AI module. So already in dev, Frederick Wouters has been really helpful. He works at Calibrate at the moment, and he's helped move a very simple AI translate module that existed, and he's put that into the AI module. A lot of the CK editor stuff that we had in OpenAI, they're now in the dev version of the AI module. So we're trying to bring a lot of that in. We're currently working on AI search. So that used to be called OpenAI embeddings. And the big thing that we're working on at the moment, it should be around any week now, really, is being able to have a chatbot where you can talk to your content and find things in your content. And that will be there. So we're going to try and include most of the kind of simple but obvious functionality you'd expect from an AI module in the AI module. So when you install it, it will actually do something. We're using Search API as our inspiration more than CTools as our inspiration. So Search API out of the box, it does do something. It works. You probably want to have Solr or Elasticsearch for it to really work well. But out of the box, you have facets. You have the ability to do search. You have all of the UI to control what goes into your index. And we're trying to do something like that. So we'll have a chatbot out of the box. We'll have it pluggable. So in Contrib, there'll be loads of different UIs and UXs and approaches to doing chatbots, like the little chat thing at the bottom right of your screen, a full screen one, in a sidebar. All of these things can be done in Contrib, but out of the box, you'll see it. And the reason why is because although it is an API module, automators will be useful for building things. AI search will be useful for making complicated applications. We wanted to include some examples of how to do it.
Right.
And also have them useful straight away in the core AI module.
Yeah, you just mentioned something which reminded me, and I think you actually just confirmed it for me as well. The AI interpolator functionality that's moving into the AI module, you're changing the name to automators. Is that correct?
It's changing to automators, and it's pretty much already there. So I think it's either in alpha or in the dev, it's been moved. And then all of the providers, almost all of them, apart from a couple of the more niche ones, have been moved across. So it's definitely something we're internally using it for some of our clients. So it's something that is still, we need to iron out some bugs, but we're pretty close to being able to release an alpha for that.
I want to circle back to providers in a couple minutes, but before we do, I'm really curious about, you mentioned that you've been talking to the other, or not the other, but other AI module maintainers, contributors over the past year and a half. Has it been an easy sell to get everybody on board with the AI module and this common functionality? And I'm not looking for you to name names, obviously, but is everybody on board with this, or are there AI modules that are like, we're just going to, go on our own for now and see how it goes?
So I think because I didn't write a lot of the code, I think I can be a little bit arrogant about how good the abstraction layer is, but I think it is really good.
Okay.
And so what we found is it's been a lot easier a sell now than it was 6 months ago, because a lot of people will look at it, and you can tell when I'm talking to some other organizations, they don't really want to work together. Maybe they want to do things in-house. They've been experimenting themselves.
Right.
And then their developers will like look at the AI abstraction layer and be like, oh, okay, we would have done everything like that. And then, there's lots of little things we've done to help things out, like make it really easy to expose the module selector in your forms, put in loads of settings. We've done a lot to help with security, to make it so that the moderation layer is on by default, to make it so that you're less likely to get banned. And we've thought about models that don't have moderation. So there's all these things that we thought about that the more people have looked at it, they've gone, okay, there's no reason why I do my own thing. We were initially getting less excitement with the more advanced submodules we've got, like AI search and AI automators. We've also got integration with ECA. But I think nobody's going to rebuild ECA from scratch now. So I think when you look at these things, a lot of these developers, as they see how they've built, and we have really built them to be tools that other people can use, I think it won't take long before everyone collaborates around AI search like they're already collaborating around the AI abstraction layer.
Yeah, I actually purposely did not put anything about ECA in our rundown, because I'm a big fan of the ECA module, and I think the integration between what the different AI providers can bring to the table as ECA actions, like that is going to be fantastic. All right, and now I'm thinking about it. I'm pausing because I'm like, I really want to talk about that, but I know that that's going to be a deep dark hole.
Well, just one thing about that is we've actually got a Google Summer Code project right now.
Oh, really?
And we're mentoring someone called Om, and his thing that he's working on is particularly ECA and AI. And he's particularly been trying to work on the UX side of things.
Oh, fantastic.
And so he had a couple of ideas, but I will see if we're halfway through, and this is quite a crazy idea. It's quite wild. It's quite interesting. We'll see if he can get to the end of it. But his current dream is to make a chatbot that allows you to describe a ECA style process. And then the AI will just create the whole thing for you. And I actually know someone who he was telling me about some software that he's been working on, where when you do these workflows, you can draw a diagram of an automated workflow that you want just on a whiteboard or piece of paper, upload it, and AI will like create the whole thing. And we're hoping to be able to do something similar with ECA. So not just use ECA to use AI within an ECA thing, but use AI to help you create these flows.
I have seen similar wish list items when talking about Starshot and Experience Builder.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't it be amazing if we could just draw the layout and then have AI generate that layout in Drupal for us? Which, I mean, it sounds like that there are providers out there that provide pieces of that. And who knows, maybe in a couple of years that'll.
Well, I mean, a couple of years or maybe a couple of months, because it is definitely something that we want to build by September. So there has been, I've been speaking to Laurie a lot. We've been speaking with the Starshot team for DrupalCon Barcelona. My dream, I don't know if we'll be able to achieve it, but Marcus has worked on some of the core basic building blocks of this. So he's got some demos. If you go to the Freely Give YouTube channel, you can see some of these demos where he's drawn components and it's created components using layout paragraphs. So we've got like the basic building blocks of a lot of these things. At Drupal Dev Days, we did a demo where you upload a PDF of a whole bunch of restaurants, and it used AI agents to create the content types, the content views, had views filters. And then meanwhile, there's Drupal Ninja. He's been working on a Drupal AI module on GitHub that is all about generating code. And he's been looking at things that have been, you upload like just a design, and it creates storybooks. So it creates like, it creates layouts, but it's all CSS, JavaScript, etc.
Right.
So there's all these pieces there together.
It's hard not to get excited about this stuff.
Yeah, I think it needs funding. So one of the things that we're exploring is trying to get funding for this before we can go ahead with it. But I reckon it will be possible by September, October. You'll be able to like put in your URL of a WordPress site you own, click a button, whole thing will be moved to Drupal. I think that is within reach of like months.
Oh my gosh.
So so when you say that as a thing, it's like, yeah, well, that's what I want to build. I just need to get it funded, but we're ready for it. We've got plans. I've got write-ups of how we're going to do it.
The crazy part is we're actually recording this in July of 2018.
Yeah.
So that's how now. All right. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to get us back on track because I could ask about that stuff a bit more, but I kind of want to talk about move to the business side of things. Because I feel like when like the average person on the street hears, the phrase AI or thinks about AI in July of 2024, they're thinking about generative AI.
Yeah.
The chat bot or Midjourney. But I actually think, and I have yet to implement any AI solutions for any of my clients yet. I'm actually getting pretty close. I'm talking to one of them for a while about what we want to do. I actually think there's much more potential for Drupal developers on kind of the non-generative side and kind of the stuff you mentioned before, that the RAG stuff where, actually parsing site content or an organization's content and then making that available, to their customers as part of a chat bot, or even doing this, simple kind of behind the scenes stuff like sentiment analysis of posts and things like that. So I'm just curious from your perspective as someone who's been using AI with clients, for definitely more time than I have, like, what are your thoughts there and what you're seeing as far as like, where do you think the business is going to be in 3, 6, 9, 12 months?
Yeah, so from we've been thinking about this a lot, and we're using this word like primitive to describe like what are the things that we know AI is so good at that if you have a situation that requires this, it's really likely to help. And one of the best primitives is making unstructured content structured. And it's something that we've tried with code before, with things like regex. You could kind of do things there a little bit. You can do searching for specific words and looking at patterns, but it's never really been very good. Usually, if you're going to do anything with code, anything in the programming space, you need structured content first. So we've been really excited by JSON, XML, all these things to try and have everything in the world already structured so that we can do stuff with it. What's exciting about Gen AI and LLMs is they can take this unstructured stuff and very quickly and easily put it into some structured format. And then once you've done that, there's a whole space of problems that you never thought you could solve that you can suddenly now solve with AI. So a really simple example, a lot of our AI automator use cases start with web scraping. So you're doing a research project. My wife did an HR research project where she was researching HR awards, and she needed to find a whole bunch of HR awards, look at like how much do they cost, what's the process for applying for them, how likely would they succeed by comparing it with her company's like successes over the last couple of years. And it all started from a web search or a PDF, which she downloaded, read, put things into a spreadsheet. There are web scraping tools that end users can use, but they're very complicated because you have to go to the website, decide like which is the bit of the website that has the useful content. What do I ignore? But with LLMs, you just scrape. You can sometimes scrape raw HTML. You can ignore everything. You can scrape a picture of the site and pull it off. And so I think that's something that's really powerful. So when you say non-generative AI, things that like people have done with machine learning, like sentiment analysis. The thing is, sentiment analysis is quite expensive. It takes quite a long time. You need quite a lot of data. You need a lot of knowledge of how to figure out how to train an ML model to do sentiment analysis on your comments. But actually, if you treat ChatGPT or Claude as an ML model that you've trained and just ask it to pretend to be one, it's pretty good. So you can get it to do sentiment analysis for you, and it will be pretty good out of the box. It won't be maybe not as good as a well-trained ML model, but it'll get you going really quickly. So I think that's one of the big use cases is there are so many areas of automation, like the train one that we talked about of automating claims. So many of them that start with some unstructured content. It might be an email, it might be a file, piece of paper, that if we have access to that we can then put it into some structured format in Drupal, JSON, or whatever, you can suddenly do loads of things with it. So that's the area I'm most excited about from a business point of view, is helping organizations automate a lot of things with that starting point.
There's at least a couple of Marcus's videos that are related to that. I know that there's one of them. There's I don't know, I don't remember the name of the module, but it's an AI interpolator scraper module of some type, where you can either scrape the whole page or you can actually pass it HTML element on the page that you want to scrape. But then there's also one, and I don't remember the exact provider or the recipe that he used, but the example was you take a picture of a receipt.
Yeah.
And the provider actually would parse that, and then it would actually create structured data out of it just based on, there'd be a line that has tax, colon, and then the amount of the tax. And, the LLM would basically associate the amount of the tax with the word tax, and that's how you kind of got your structured data. So a lot of that stuff is already possible. It's just a matter of, using these building blocks. And that's kind of where I want to go next with this discussion. This will be kind of our last big topic. But for me, one of the biggest eye-openers as I was starting reading more about AI integration in Drupal and all these modules was just the sheer number of providers, businesses out there, startups that are providing APIs to their models that are specific to certain tasks. And so I guess, if someone is brand new to, not brand new to AI, but they're looking into how I want to start integrating AI into some of my Drupal solutions. Where do they go to start learning about all of the potential for, all of these providers and all the different things they do? A lot of what I've learned so far, quite honestly, has been by watching Marcus's videos.
I think that's the answer. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a model out there and an API. I think it's Perfect Prompt. And you literally send it a prompt, like an AI prompt, and maybe give it some extra data, and it will send you back a better prompt that you can use with a different AI model. So learning about all the available models, that's one level of knowledge. And then integrating them is another level. But where would someone start from a non-Drupal standpoint?
I actually think, workflows of AI is probably the best place I've seen. It's one of the reasons why I really wanted to work with Marcus, is I would speak to all these people who are doing AI stuff, and they would tell me about embeddings and vector search and transformer models and neural nets, and they would talk about all this tech. And then I saw Marcus, and he was just he just made so many, there's 60 videos of him. I can build this, I can build this, I can build this. And that to me is the exciting thing about AI, is not how it works, but that it works, all the ways in which you can just use it for these things very quickly.
Right.
And because you can build things so quickly, it doesn't matter if it wasn't work perfectly the first time around. It took you 20 minutes. So you just tweak it all the time. And so almost everyone I've spoken to when they're trying to get into AI, I actually think that's a really good, particularly if you're a developer, workflows of AI is one of the best things I've seen that's out there. Because everything else starts with you can look at tutorials on LangChain, you can look at tutorials on Llama Index, and they are really good. If you look at Llama Index is sort of, I would say, it's sort of beating LangChain as the go-to library. It's better built, it does more advanced stuff. What you can do with Llama Index is way cooler and way more advanced than what you can currently do with the AI module in Drupal. It's really, really, really cool and cutting edge. But you have to write a lot of code.
Right.
You have to do a lot of work before you get going. If you're going to use it to index all your content, it's going to take you hours and hours to figure out how to store anything before you can try something out. You try workflows of AI, you can follow one of those tutorials. We did one recently that we would recommend is with Mirantis Tech Talks. Mirantis is enterprise hosting, and in the Drupal community, they own Amazy.
Okay.
A lot of people know of Amazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so me and Marcus, we did a podcast there recently where we built an AI application that is aimed at an event organizer, a corporate event organizer, and they want to research venues. And it's this tool that you can put in the URL of a venue, and it will extract true information, like how many people, the capacity, number of rooms, categorizes it, but also can extract things from Google reviews and then summarize them and give you strengths and weaknesses depending on the use case that you've told it. And we had this thing of build a AI application in 20 minutes because it's a 20-minute podcast. I think it more takes about an hour because there's a lot of fields that you have to click. But if you go to that podcast, Marcus has recorded a 3.5-hour one where he goes from the beginning. You have to install DDev yourself, but you've got DDev on your machine. You've never used Drupal before. You know nothing about it. And he takes you through all the steps to build this very complex AI application. And we've got a non-coder project manager on our team who she started working through it and has found it really helpful. So I actually genuinely think that I know I work with him, but it's a really, really good starting place. Everywhere else will always get you having to worry about getting your dev environment set up in this complicated way and learning about really underlying stuff about how the OpenAI API works that you don't really need to know to get going.
I think there is a certain level of like vocabulary that is very helpful to understand when working with AI. But then past that, I think I understand exactly what you're saying, where it is very helpful just to see stuff happening.
Yeah, there is. Certainly a year ago, it was true that you needed to know all this vocabulary. One of the things I think I really like about the AI Automator is it does all this training stuff in a way that's very intuitive. That doesn't, It's just like, I've got a field and it's a summary of reviews. So I'm going to use AI to write a summary of reviews. And where do those reviews come from? Well, I had another field that scraped it all from Google reviews. So I'm going to insert a token. And you are chaining and you are doing prompt engineering and you are thinking about context limits and all of these terms, but you don't actually need to think about those things to get it to do what you want. And there's a really cool, I used to give these talks before, and there was this quote by someone at OpenAI who said that everyone's worried about what do they have to do now to have a job working with AGI. And he said, all of us are used to working with HGI, human general intelligence.
Yeah.
And we're all having to figure out how to communicate what we want, ask people to do things for us, evaluate if the thing they did was good enough. And that's a thing that you can be better at or worse at. You can be better at knowing how to use language. You can be better at evaluating how something has went.
Right.
And this X post was saying, like, actually focusing on that, I think is more important than knowing about the specifics of AI, because as AI gets cleverer and cleverer and cleverer, you need less and less of that stuff. So I feel like, that's my view.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that is very, because it boils down to communications, right? Being able to communicate what you want in a way, give it, clear parameters, clear goals. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So the last thing I want to bring up is, we've been talking about a lot of different AI providers. Most of them do have a free tier. Not all of them, though. So what we haven't really talked about yet is, how much is all of this going to cost? And don't worry, I'm not going to ask you, to answer that. But I mean, that's a valid question for someone who is going to, watch workflows of AI, or someone who wants to, even as you mentioned, out of the box AI module, you want to have a chatbot that works with the organization's content. I mean, is everything that you're envisioning in the AI module going to be available at a free tier without using a paid tier of a provider? Or like how do you envision that kind of playing out over the next few months?
Yeah, so to start with, one of the tools we built, we wrote a prompt with OpenAI, and it was about 6 cents per prompt. And we were expecting to do maybe something like 60 to 70,000 a year. So that would be an idea of like the costs associated with, it was just an example to give you kind of indicative costs. When it comes to the free tier, most of the APIs you do have to pay all the time. The only one that is free is Hugging Face. So we do have the Hugging Face provider, and that gives you loads of open source ones. And that is free, but it breaks all the time. Like it's, if you want to use it, you have to just keep clicking run, and to try and get in, because they limit how many things they'll process per like second almost. But the best way to get started is to get it on your own machine. So there's a tool called Llama LM Studio that you can download, get it on your Windows machine, Mac, Linux. It is proprietary, but it's built on some open source software that allows you to download a model onto your own machine. And we have a LM Studio provider. We also have something called Ollama that is similar, but it's purely open source. The UI isn't quite there yet, so that's why I'm recommending LM Studio at the moment. But there, when you're building things, you can test out really good open source models all on your machine, and that doesn't cost anything apart from obviously the energy costs of your laptop running it. And there are some models out there like Gemma 7B that will run on machines that don't have a graphics card. So you can do basic things there. But yeah, if you're going to use OpenAI or Claude, you're probably going to have to pay something per per thing that you run. But usually when you're testing things, you probably don't need to spend more than like $5 or $10 to try stuff out. But it does mean unless you have a good business model, you don't really want to be putting a chatbot on your website that is open to anyone to use, because then the cost could go up.
Right. Yeah, I think that's going to be a challenge for, there's a technical challenge for Drupal developers of just learning all this stuff and understanding how to implement it. But then there's also the business challenge of, like, how do you estimate for your clients how much all this stuff is going to cost, not from a building standpoint, but just from an API standpoint. And I think that's a bit of a challenge.
That is a challenge. There's functionality we plan to build in the AI module. So we've started plans for that. It's all about prioritizing what's important. But one of our goals is to have a price evaluating tool. So when you do your test runs, you can do a test run and it will tell you how many tokens it used, how much it costs, and then you can use that to extrapolate when you do it in real life. So it's one of those things that we're hoping to work with in the AI module.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Jamie, this has been fantastic. Every time, I try and spend a few hours every week, more lately, just playing around with this stuff and learning more. And I get excited every time I dive into this again. I get more and more excited, and talking to you, the feeling is the same. There's so many other kind of avenues of discussion in this area, but I'm just super excited for the future of AI and Drupal. I know that there have been, I think your blog post might mention that you're hoping that there could be some type of AI integration with Starshot eventually in the future. Even what you talked about earlier as far as drawing the layout and having that automatically just come to fruition is just amazing. So I can't thank you enough for your time. I can't thank you, for your support of the AI module and Marcus's time as well. And just thank you. And I can't wait to see, how the AI module develops.
Cool. Oh, thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
All right. Super duper.
Yeah. I don't know if I should also mention, the Starshot stuff and what I want to do by September. Those are just my opinions and ideas.
Yeah. No one's going to hold you to them. This is not an official, this podcast is not an official document of any type. So you can say whatever you want. All right, well, cool. Thank you very much. And hopefully we'll get you on another podcast in the future. Thank you for listening to the DrupalEasy podcast. Don't forget to check out all of our long-form Drupal training courses at DrupalEasy.com. And stay tuned for the next episode of the DrupalEasy podcast. See ya!